in this place. Now, it's traditional, I'm afraid, and indeed expected, that chancellors, besides giving the news, should expatiate a little on life and the times. And it's an invitation, I'm afraid, to platitude, which I shall try to avoid. Today, however, I'm going to speak rather seriously, indeed, out of a deep and troubled conviction that where we are as a country is profoundly worrying. I hope, for those of you who come from abroad, much of what I have to say will have less relevance in your homeland, although I fear it may not. What I'm talking about is the decline in values in this country, which is evident on every side, the decline in trust, public trust in institutions, the decline of integrity, again, manifest far and wide, from business to sport, you name it. And you, young people who are going mainly into the world of the arts, and the performing arts in particular, I'm sure you will realize that integrity is not an optional extra wherever you are and whatever you do. And indeed, some of the bigger shocks about tax avoidance or evasion, choose your word, have come from well-known entertainers. And at least one observes they have a good deal more shame than some of the others. But we do suffer a real crisis of values, which has been creeping up on us over several decades and is, as I say, now profound. The writing, I would suggest, has been on the wall long enough. In 1988, I had to deliver the annual BBC Radio 4 Hibbert Lecture, and I chose as my subject love of money. One of the studio panelists, because after the lecture there was then a studio discussion before the invited audience, he happened to be a senior cleric, wittily commented that my diagnosis was, and I can remember it vividly, too bad to be true. Unfortunately, my predictions in that lecture turned out to be far too moderate. At all events, Britain, which was once a byword internationally for integrity and fair play, can scarcely claim that credit today. When I went up to the city as a young lawyer in 1964, its motto, "My word is my bond," did represent, for very many of its leaders, a practical ideal. Today, the observer might not unfairly characterize the square mile as driven by greed, as being demoralized in the literal meaning of that word, and as having little sense of individual, corporate, or collective duty, sense of duty to anybody but themselves, not always to their shareholders. In effect, the city is assets rich and values poor. And I don't want to lump all my comments onto the city, because I say, as I think one can observe everywhere, just look at Parliament, look at what we did. 3 years ago, the lid was taken off the shameful fact that the majority of MPs and peers were defrauding the expenses system. Where do people now look for their role models, for their inspiration? Who are their exemplars? And these are, I repeat, absolutely fundamentally important issues. Because if your values go as a society, you are then in a deep, dark sea. And we are, if not there, fast getting there. Just think, quickly of earnings differentials in this country. What's that doing to our social cohesion? The likes of Mr. Diamond get paid more in a day, and I've checked this carefully, more in a day than many state-registered nurses get paid in a year. Who's the most useful? And it's not just an odd banker or two. Tax avoidance, evasion, although a lawyer, I refuse to attach to those alternatives as much credence as others would, is rife, absolutely rife, so that it's now typical for a shop floor worker to pay a higher rate of tax than his highly paid boss. What sort of society is that, I ask you? Where is fairness? Where is justice? Where is a sense of obligation or a sense of community? And that's another thing, my friends. Our communities are breaking down, and the people, the elite, who should be contributing to them of their time and experience and skill, more and more are not. So I wanted to, I'm sorry if this is all a bit serious for your great day, but in a funny way, I think that it's on a great day that one can present a great challenge, because it is a great challenge to you. You are, like it or not, the elite in this country, the crème de la crème. Our hopes for the future rest on the shoulders of you and other groups like you throughout the universities of this land. And as Chaucer said, if gold rusts, what will iron do? And I beseech you, every one of you, not to dismiss all this as none of your business or someone else's problem because I'm in the arts or whatever. We're all in this together, and in a funny way, in a celebrity culture, people in the arts and the performing arts particularly are more likely than any other group to provide example, to provide models. And so what I'm saying in short is that the moral reformation that's now indispensable to this country, and indeed many others, because let's be honest, many countries are even worse, far worse situation. But unless we set to, and that means you lot, in your individual ways, wherever you are, however you can do it, we face an unthinkable degradation as a country. And I suppose one of the most pernicious aspects of all this is the dominant corporate culture, which is so stifling of individual moral will and autonomy. I sometimes think people leave their morals behind when they leave the house on a Monday morning to go into work. And we do have this strange situation where good men and women, because they are overwhelmingly good men and women, lead their working lives according to one set of values and their private and personal lives according to a quite different set of values. And they are extraordinarily different in so many ways. And just lastly, don't look to Parliament to bail us out. I've been in the House of Lords 14 years now, and we can do some things, and we try. And although I made reference to the expenses, frauds, most of the people there too are actually good people trying to do a good job. But the law is not the answer to the crisis we are in. This is about hearts and minds. This is about values and principles. And the law can only go so far in inculcating that. After all, if passing laws was an assurance of dealing with problems, we'd have no corruption, etc. in this country, because we legislate more than any legislature in the free world, my friends. 12 to 15,000 pages of new law a year. That's what we do up there. And it's a farce, much of it. The truth is that only individuals walking their own talk, living their own values, can ultimately stop this insidious dry rot. So if you find yourselves in a job where you can't live out your values, leave it. Painful and risky though that may be. There's nothing I've observed more pathetic, in the real sense of that word, than bright, able, decent young men and women, and then eventually old men and women, trapped in jobs where they're overpaid and somehow having the life sucked out of them over time so that they become diminished, even whilst money rich. And the irony, of course, is that those who do put something back, particularly of themselves, the fulfillment that they garner from that is wonderful. And as one who's worked in the charity sector as a lawyer for 30 years, it's astonishing to see the release and the excitement of so many trustees of charities, men and women who get paid heaven knows what per hour in what they do, nothing in their trusteeship, and it makes them flower. And lastly, we only live once. This isn't a dress rehearsal. So don't put it off and put it off and put it off. Do it, and do it quick. And so, to finish, I want to just congratulate you again on where you've got to and where I hope you are going to in your different ways. And there'll be setbacks, and it's not easy times and all of that. But you're able, bright, and with a modicum of will, you will, I'm sure, have successful and fulfilled lives. I thank you on behalf of everybody here, and I thank the academic and other staff of the university on your behalves for what they have done to help you along